Billionaire, CEO, saw the black maid, comfort his autistic son, and something in him broke. Before we begin, comment below and tell us, where are you watching from, which city or town, and when it's over, be sure to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. The cry echoed through the mansion like a siren, sharp and panicked. No one moved except her. She wasn't supposed to go up there. She wasn't even allowed on that floor. But when Maya heard that kind of cry, the kind that tears from the chest of a child who can't speak, she remembered her little brother and how no one came. So this time, she did. She didn't know the boy belonged to the billionaire. She didn't know his mother was gone. She didn't know her presence would change everything. But the moment his tiny hands gripped her sleeve, 이초 니 형시마치히 chose her, and somewhere down the hall, his father watched, frozen, heart cracking open for the first time in years. The cry that changed everything. The sound came sharp, like something splitting down the middle. Not a cry for food, not the whimper of a tired child. This was something deeper, urgent, terrified. A sound that wrapped around the bones and pulled hard. Maya William froze, cloth still damp in her hand, halfway through, wiping a window on the second floor of the Vale mansion. She'd been working there, just 5 days assigned to light cleaning in the East Wing. No one ever said anything about the 5th floor. In fact, most of the staff avoided it like it was cursed. But that cry, it clawed at something inside her. "Miss," the butler called from downstairs, sharp but calm. "You're not to go up there." She didn't answer. She moved. Each step up felt heavier, like she was crossing some invisible line. At the end of the hallway, flickering lights spilled from a half-open door. Inside, a boy sat curled against the bookshelf, his small body rocking, his forehead striking the shelf in a steady, painful rhythm. He was alone. No comfort, no supervision, just raw panic trapped in a little body. Maya's breath caught. She wanted to turn around, to listen to the rules, but something old stirred in her, something that remembered. Her brother, Germain, used to do the same thing under tables, behind chairs, fists tight against his ears, the world too loud and too fast. And no one ever knew how to help him. No one tried, except her. So she took a few careful steps into the room and sat on the floor. Not close, not touching, just present. "Hey, sweetheart," she whispered, voice barely above the hum of the sensory projector. "I'm not going to touch you. I'm just here." He didn't look up, but the rhythm of his rocking softened. She kept her hands visible, open-palmed, like a peace offering. Then slowly, she raised one and signed across her chest. Safe. Just one motion. The one her grandmother used to use. The one that always made Germain pause. And for a second, just the smallest flicker, the boy looked at her. Then, "What the hell are you doing?" Maya turned. He stood in the doorway, tall, suited, and furious. Preston Vale, the billionaire, the CEO, whose name was stamped on every marble surface of this mansion. "I'm sorry, sir," Maya said quickly, standing before she could think. "I heard him crying, and who gave you permission to be in this room?" "No one. I just..." He sounded like he was in danger. "Step away from my son." Her chest tightened, but she obeyed, stepping aside. Preston walked toward the boy, arms out. But the moment he touched him, the child shrieked, screaming, kicking, clawing, wild with fear. The sound cut through the house like sirens. Preston recoiled, stunned. "What's wrong with him?" he muttered. "May I?" Maya asked softly. He didn't respond, but he didn't stop her either. She knelt again, quiet, measured, and the moment she got close, the boy twisted toward her and collapsed into her arms like he'd been waiting. His small hands grabbed her sleeve. His face pressed into her shoulder. The room fell silent. Preston just stood there, watching, staring. Something in his face changed, not broken, not softened, just stopped. "What did you do?" he asked finally, his voice barely audible. "I didn't do anything," Maya whispered. "I just listened." Chapter 1. The Cry That Changed Everything. Maya stayed on the nursery floor long after Eli stopped crying. She didn't rush, didn't rock. She just breathed, slow and steady, anchoring the weight of a boy who clung to her like a raft in a storm he couldn't name. His hair was soft against her shoulder. His fingers still gripped her sleeve, small and tense, and though his eyes stayed shut, she could feel it. He wasn't asleep. He was listening. For years, Maya had cleaned houses without making a sound. Diner jobs before that, nursing homes too. She had mastered the art of invisibility. But this boy saw her in a way no one else ever had. Not with words, not even with his eyes, just with trust. And trust, she knew, was never silent. It echoed across the room. Preston Vale stood frozen. His phone had gone dark in his hand. The sharp businessman, the man who barked numbers and snapped decisions, looked suddenly too tall for his own skin. Maya didn't speak. Eli shifted, and slowly, so slowly, his tiny fist released the wrinkle of her shirt. That was when she knew he'd heard her. Not the words, the presence. She laid him gently on the soft beanbag in the corner, covering him with a weighted blanket. The moment her hands left him, he stirred but didn't panic. He turned his face slightly toward the light and settled. A breath caught in Maya's chest. She rose and turned to find Preston watching her, still unmoving, still unreadable. "Miss William," he said finally. Voice clipped. She flinched, not visibly but inside. Everything recoiled. She was about to be fired. She had crossed a boundary, a big one. She straightened. "Yes, sir. In my office. Now." The walk down the hall was slow and silent. The marble echoed under her cheap flats, each step louder than it had any right to be. The door to his office was heavy. She had dusted it, sure, but never crossed the threshold. Inside, the room was vast and cold, lined with dark oak shelves and untouched books. A single massive desk sat under a hanging modern chandelier. Clean, precise, like the man himself. "Sit," he said. Maya did. Preston took the seat opposite, legal pad in hand. Not writing, just tapping a pen against its edge. He studied her. She folded her hands in her lap, heart beating too fast. "You handled him," he said slowly, like someone who's done it 100 times. She shook her head. "I haven't, not with him. Just someone like him? Your brother." She blinked. "Yes, Germain. He passed 4 years ago." Preston's eyes flicked up. Something human softened his face. "I'm sorry," he said. "Thank you." A pause. "No therapist," he continued. "No specialist. Not one has calmed him like that. Not in over 2 years. And you walked in there with a cleaning rag in your hand and—" "I didn't fix him," she said quietly. "I just saw him." The pen stopped tapping. "Children like Eli, they don't need to be fixed. They need to be heard. You can't rush their silence. You have to sit in it with them." Preston leaned back. "You sound like someone who should be doing more than cleaning floors." She gave a soft smile, almost sad. "I'm someone who needed a job. My grandma's got medical bills. This paid more than the diner." He closed the notepad. "I want to make you an offer." Her eyes narrowed. "Sir, I need someone who can reach him. Not another clipboard. Not a therapist who vanishes after 2 weeks. He already trusts you." Maya shook her head. "I'm not a nanny. I don't need a nanny. I need you." She hesitated. "I'll double your pay," he continued. "You'll stay in the staff wing, private room, health insurance, Weekends off. No more mopping. The numbers hit her like a wave. That kind of money meant medications for Grandma Loretta. It meant food security. It meant breathing room. But if I fail him, she whispered, it won't be like one more stranger leaving. It'll be a betrayal. Preston leaned forward. I've had behaviorists from Stanford, elite agency nannies, a family therapist who charged $2.00 an hour. None of them lasted more than a week. He paused. You said it's not magic. It's just care. That's even rarer, he said. She looked down at her chipped nails. Loretta used to say, baby, if God opens a door, don't stand there arguing about the knob. Maya nodded. I'll try. He stood and extended his hand. Small, firm, real. And just like that, something began. That night, she moved into the East Wing. Mrs. Green handed her a key card and a folded towel. Mr. Vale had it redone for you, she said. Maya blinked. For me, he don't give spare rooms to helpers. The room was modest but warm. Twin bed, worn rug, a desk facing the window. She unpacked in 15 minutes 3 outfits, a tattered journal, and a photo of Loretta holding Jermaine as a baby. She placed the frame on the nightstand, just beside the lamp, and for the first time in years, when she lay down to sleep, her chest didn't feel hollow. It felt, still, like something was waiting. Chapter 2. Mirumi Mahor. She wasn't meant to enter. The sun had barely risen when Maya stood outside the nursery door again. She clutched a tray toast cut diagonally, scrambled eggs with no seasoning, and a plastic cup of apple juice. Nothing fancy, just quiet comfort. She took a breath and knocked softly. No answer. She opened the door a crack. Eli was already awake, sitting on the rug in his pajamas. He was lining up toy trains by color. Blue, red, green. His movements were precise, delicate, as if even gravity needed permission. Good morning, Maya said gently. He didn't respond, but he paused. That was enough. She entered, slow and measured, and sat on the far end of the rug. Not close, never close. She knew better. She placed the tray on a small table and waited. No rush. Let him notice her. Let the space do the talking. After a few minutes, he reached over with his foot and nudged a blue train toward her. She smiled. Thanks. She slid a red one back. It wasn't a game. It was something holier than that. Hours passed, with only the sound of clicking train wheels and Maya's soft humming, the kind of hum that wasn't for entertainment, but for anchoring. Her grandmother used to hum while cooking, while folding, while waiting for bad news to pass. By midday, Eli had scooted 3 inches closer. By 3, Nazaria. He let her place a pillow beside him. And by 4, Sinstrongir, when Maya softly began to hum, I'll fly away. He tilted his head and listened, just a little, just enough. Down the hall, Preston stood in the shadows. He hadn't meant to linger, but something about the way she sat still, patient, quiet held him in place. Her silence wasn't passive, it was powerful. Eli moved closer to her, and Maya didn't react. She didn't reach. She let him lead, and somehow, Preston felt something ache in his chest. Not grief, not fear, something gentler. Hope. Later that evening, as dusk settled over the estate and golden light touched every marble tile, Maya stood by the nursery window, watching the garden. Her arms were folded, her back straight, but tired. She didn't hear him enter. How was he today? Preston asked. Softer now. Maya turned. He wasn't in his usual 3-piece armor, just a white shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows. His voice had lost its edge. Peaceful, she replied. No meltdowns, no flinching. He let me sit closer today. Preston stepped beside her and looked down at his son, now curled on the floor beside a blanket fort, gently pressing puzzle pieces into place. "I don't know what you're doing," he muttered. "It's not a trick," she said. "It's time. It's presence. It's letting him lead." He nodded, slowly, like someone learning a language without a guidebook. "He used to love trains," he said suddenly. "Emma, his mom, used to take him to the railroad museum every other Saturday." Maya didn't respond. She didn't need to. He continued, voice low. "He hasn't asked to go since she passed." The silence wrapped around them, not heavy, just honest. "I thought I was doing the right things," he said. "Therapists, programs, I spent thousands. But it only got worse." Maya looked at him. "Grief doesn't respond to invoices," she said. He turned. "What about you?" he asked. "Do you think he remembers her?" "I think he feels her absence," she said, after a long pause, "even if he doesn't know how to name it." Preston walked to the armchair and sat. For the first time, he looked like a father, not a CEO. "I was married 10 years, he said. "We met in college. I was all rules. She was jazz, laughed too loud, danced barefoot on balconies." Maya smiled. "She sounds wonderful." She was. His voice cracked just slightly. Across the room, Eli looked up. Eyes met for one heartbeat. Preston stood and slowly approached. "Hey, bud," he whispered, kneeling beside the boy. "How's the train coming?" Eli didn't speak, didn't flinch, but he didn't recoil either. That was something. Preston looked back at Maya. "You think he'll ever talk again?" "I think he already is," she said. "You just have to learn the version of language he trusts." He looked at his son a moment longer, then nodded. That night, Maya sat on the bed in her staff wing room, brushing her fingers across the photo of Loretta and Jermaine. "You'd like him," she whispered. "He's a mess, but he's trying." A knock came. Mrs. Green stood with a tray grilled salmon, sweet potatoes, and green beans. "Mr. Vale said, you forgot dinner." "I didn't realize." Apparently, neither did the boy. He didn't scream once today. Miracle of miracles. Maya accepted the tray and sat in silence. She hadn't expected warmth here, or food made with care, or kindness passed on a tray like an offering. But maybe things were changing. Maybe she was too. Chapter 3. En Francine. Had a deal with a gentleman. The next morning, Maya entered the nursery at 8:30 sharp, her steps as soft as her voice. Eli was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the rug, tracing slow circles onto the window glass with one finger. The sunlight spilled in gently behind him, casting warm streaks across the floor. She didn't speak at first. She simply sat far enough to not intrude, close enough to be felt. In front of her, she placed a small dry erase board and a single marker. "I thought we could try something," she said. Voice, no louder than a whisper. She drew a sun, then a cloud, then handed him the marker. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then slowly, he took it and drew a crooked heart. Maya's breath caught. Her hands didn't move, but tears quietly gathered behind her eyes. From the hallway, Preston had stopped just outside the door. He didn't enter, didn't interrupt, but his hand hovered near the handle like part of him needed to witness it, and part of him didn't feel worthy to walk into that kind of peace. That evening, as the sky turned lavender and the house eased into hush, Maya found her way to the back garden. The air was thick with the scent of chamomile and fresh mulch. The magnolia tree, full and proud, rustled in the breeze like an old friend stretching her limbs. Maya carried her usual mug, Loretta's old blend of cinnamon and hibiscus, and tucked her feet under her on the bench. The garden had become her refuge, a place where silence felt sacred instead of cold. She hadn't been sitting long when the gate creaked open behind her. "I hope I'm not intruding," Preston said. She turned, slightly startled. He stood there in slacks and a soft navy sweater, no tie, no cuffs. No armor, just a man. You're not, she replied. I was just thinking. Chamomile, Loretta's blend. Want some? I brought my own. He held up a second mug and offered it to her. Figured bourbon before bed. Didn't exactly scream peace. She took it gently, eyebrows raised. That's thoughtful. I've been trying. They sat. Close, but not too close. I've been meaning to ask, he said, voice a little unsure, a little more human. Your brother. Jermaine. What happened? Maya exhaled. He had a seizure. Complications from an infection. He passed at 10. I was filling out insurance paperwork when it happened. Preston looked at her. I'm sorry. He was the only person who ever saw me without asking for anything back. He didn't talk, but I never felt more understood than when I sat next to him in silence. He nodded slowly. That sounds like Eli. A quiet settled over them, the kind that doesn't need to be broken. You make this look easy, Preston said, but I know it's not. This house, me, you're not difficult, she replied gently. You're grieving in the only way you know how. He turned to her. Call me Preston, please. She hesitated, then nodded. Okay. Preston. The wind stirred the tree above them, sending a few petals scattering onto the bench. I want to learn, he said suddenly. I want to understand him, like you do. Her heart beat faster. You already are, she said. No. I watch you with him. The way you notice him, you respond before he even gestures. I don't have that instinct. You don't need instinct. You need willingness. He'll teach you. If you're patient. Their eyes met, and in that moment, something shifted, not in volume or words, but in presence. I want to try, he said. And for the first time since she met him, she didn't see the CEO. She saw the father, uncertain, flawed, and finally, ready. The next morning, Maya entered the sunroom to find Preston already there. Eli was stacking wooden blocks. Preston knelt beside him, clumsy but committed. More, he signed with unsure fingers. Eli paused, then copied him his own version of more. Preston blinked fast, his throat tight. He didn't say anything, but he didn't need to. Later that night, Maya wrote in her journal, he's coming back to his son, not as a fixer, but as a father, learning a new language built on stillness, trust, and steady hands. There was a knock at her door. Preston stood outside, holding a book. I found this in Emma's things, he said. It's about sensory development. Thought we could read it together. She took it. I'd like that. And as he turned to leave, he paused and added, thank you for staying. Chapter 4. The retreat. The sunroom had become a rhythm. Each morning, Maya arrived with something small colored cards, scented clay, a soft textured mat, and Eli welcomed her with silence that no longer felt closed. It felt calm. Today, she laid out a set of emotion cards. Each face was drawn in bold cartoon expression. Happy, sad, scared, proud. This one's happy, she said, tapping the yellow card. Eli picked it up, touched it, then looked up at her. He pressed the card gently to his own chest. Yeah, she whispered, her voice tight with emotion. That's right. That afternoon, Preston came home early. The house didn't echo like it used to. There was music playing in the kitchen. The windows were open. And upstairs, he heard it again. A sound that had once been so rare, it made him stop in his tracks. Laughter, not loud, not perfect, but real. He followed the sound into the playroom. Eli sat cross-legged on the floor, watching Maya perform a silent puppet show. A giraffe arguing with a sock puppet over a pretend teacup. When the sock puppet collapsed dramatically, Eli giggled. It was brief, but it was there. Preston stood in the doorway, stunned. Maya looked up and straightened. Mr. Vale, I didn't hear you come in. Was that him? Preston asked, stepping in slowly. Laughing, she nodded, sort of, no sound. But he's close. Preston crouched beside his son. Hey, buddy. Eli didn't flinch, didn't pull away. Instead, he reached out tiny fingers, brushing Preston's shirt before turning back to the toys. He's trusting you, Maya said softly. Preston nodded, his jaw tight. He used to play like this with Emma. She had a ridiculous sock puppet voice. He loved it. He paused. Thank you. Maya gave him a small smile. I'm not doing anything. You couldn't. He looked at her, eyes full of quiet weight. That's the part I find hardest to believe. That evening, Maya stepped outside to the garden again. Spring had deepened, and the camellias were blooming in full. She sat beneath the magnolia tree, cradling her usual mug. Footsteps approached. I hope I'm not becoming a habit, Preston said gently. She smiled. I don't mind. He held out a second mug. Chamomile. She took it, still thoughtful. They sat together under the stars. I've been thinking about the museum, he said suddenly. The one with the trains. I haven't taken Eli anywhere in almost a year. Maya looked at him. You're thinking of going? He nodded. Not just for him. For me. I used to be someone who did things. With Emma, with Eli. Now I just manage things. Maya said nothing. Then she offered, let's try something smaller first. His brow lifted. There's a retreat, a private one, quiet, sensory friendly. Just a garden, a few animals, a lake. One of my old coworkers volunteers there. No pressure, no crowds. Preston looked at her, curious. You'd come with us, if you want me to. He nodded, slowly. I'd like that. They went that weekend. The car ride was soft jazz and hushed roads. Maya packed snacks. Preston brought Eli's weighted blanket. Eli wore his favorite blue hoodie and clutched a stuffed bear in his lap the whole way. The retreat was nestled near the edge of the city, a small, gated property, surrounded by trees and open fields. Gentle wind chimes sang in the distance. Eli stepped out cautiously. Maya knelt beside him and whispered, just watch, no pressure. They visited the koi pond first, then the lavender maze. Eli didn't speak, but he didn't resist. At one point, he took Maya's hand and gently pressed her palm against a glass window overlooking the lake. Preston watched them from behind, a lump forming in his throat. Later, they sat on a bench overlooking the water. Eli was asleep in Maya's lap. Preston turned to her. I needed this, he said quietly. I didn't realize how much. She didn't respond right away. Then, he did too. A pause. I've missed so much, Preston said. She looked at him. You're here now. He stared at the horizon. I'm afraid I'll mess it up again. You will, she said softly. We all do. But love isn't about getting it perfect. It's about staying. He turned to her. His expression wasn't polished. It was raw and human. I want to stay. Her breath caught. Not because it was romantic, because it was honest. Later that night, back at the house, Eli didn't protest when Preston tucked him into bed. He even reached for his father's hand. Preston bent down and whispered, Night, buddy. From the hallway, Maya watched quietly. Preston looked up at her, and for a moment, no one spoke. The silence was no longer a wound. It was a beginning. Chapter 5. The Fire Pit. The estate grounds were quiet that night. The kind of quiet that felt earned, not hollow, but full of what had come before. Maya stood on the back patio, a soft knit blanket draped over her shoulders. The fire pit crackled gently in front of her, its orange glow flickering against the stone walls. She sipped a mug of chamomile and let the warmth settle her bones. Then, the glass door slid open behind her. Preston stepped out, wearing a navy sweater and faded jeans. No jacket, no shield, just him. You always find your way to the fire, he said softly. Some things feel safe, she replied. He hesitated, then sat beside her, close enough to share the heat, far enough not to crowd her. For a few moments, they didn't speak, just let the fire talk. I used to think I could fix everything with control, Preston finally said. That if I scheduled every appointment, managed every moment, I could outrun the grief. Maya didn't look at him. She just listened. I failed her. He whispered, Emma. I didn't know how to be soft with her pain. I didn't know how to hold it. I just tried to fix it. Maya set her mug down. You were surviving. He turned to her. So were you. She nodded. I remember signing the hospital papers, she said quietly, and thinking, if I had stayed home that day instead of working, Germaine might have still been alive. Preston exhaled slowly. That kind of guilt doesn't let go easy. No, she said, but it doesn't have to win. The fire cracked. Behind them, the wind moved through the trees like a hymn. You remind me of her sometimes, Preston said suddenly. Not because you're alike, but because you love with the same stubbornness. Maya's breath caught. Stubborn. She never let silence mean surrender. She'd sit with Eli for hours and never ask for anything back. That's not stubborn, Maya whispered. That's devotion. He looked at her, really looked. I see that in you. She turned away. I'm just a maid. No, he said, his voice firmer. You're the first person who walked into this house and saw him not as a problem. As a child, she blinked fast, then asked, what do you see when you look at me? Preston didn't rush the answer. He reached down, picked up a stray pine cone from beneath the bench, rolled it between his fingers. When I first met you, he said slowly, I saw a problem, someone who broke a rule, crossed a line, and now I see the only person who's brought peace to this house. She held his gaze. The fire danced in his eyes. And you, he asked, what do I see in you? He nodded. She took a breath. A man trying very hard not to fall apart. He almost laughed. Almost. But it turned into a sigh. You make me feel. He began, then stopped. Seen. He nodded. Same, she whispered. A long pause passed. He turned toward her, slow, careful. Then he reached out and gently brushed her wrist with his fingertips. It wasn't a touch. It was a question. She didn't pull away. That was her answer. They stayed like that, side by side, as the fire burned down to embers. Later that night, Maya lay awake in her bed. Eli was asleep across the hall. The house was still. But she wasn't afraid of the stillness anymore. It was starting to feel like a kind of truth, like something she might finally belong to. Chapter 6. The Reveal. The knock came sharp, too sharp for the hour. Maya had just finished setting Eli's oatmeal to cool on the kitchen counter when she heard it. Not the soft kind of knock that belonged in a house like this. A purposeful knock, authoritative. Preston appeared within seconds. Shirt sleeves rolled, brow already creased before he even touched the front door. Maya stepped quietly into the hallway, her instincts prickling. She held Eli close against her hip, his little arms looped around her neck, heart pounding gently through his pajama shirt. Standing at the door was a man in a tailored gray suit, holding a clipboard. Two others stood beside him, one with an earpiece, the other with a government-issued stare. Mr. Caldwell? The first man asked. Professional and clipped. Yes, I'm Marcus Fielding. We're with Child Welfare Services. We've received a report of possible neglect involving your son. We're here for an in-home evaluation. For a moment, time paused. Preston's voice dropped, dangerously calm. This is absurd. Who filed the report? We're not permitted to disclose the source during the initial phase. Maya's blood chilled. She stepped closer, arms tightening around Eli. He's safe, she said, firmly. I'm with him every day. Marcus turned to her. And you are Maya William, his full-time caregiver. The agent jotted that down like it meant nothing. Preston's eyes never left the clipboard. You're not entering this house until I speak with legal counsel. You're entitled to that. Marcus said. However, refusal to cooperate may trigger a court order. Preston held the door half closed and dialed his attorney on speaker. 5 minutes. He told the agents, "You'll enter under legal observation." The evaluation began. They moved through the house like auditors in a museum, inspecting pantry contents, examining bedding, asking detached questions with clinical detachment. Maya stood with Eli the whole time. His breathing was tight, his eyes wide. He hadn't spoken, of course, but his grip on her shirt didn't loosen once. When one of the agents asked to speak to Eli alone, Maya stepped in. "He's nonverbal. I'm his voice." They relented. And after an hour, it was over. No citations, no findings. But just as they were about to leave, Marcus turned back. Off the record. "Mr. Caldwell, it's rare we walk into a house this well prepared." Preston didn't smile, just nodded once and shut the door behind them, then turned to Maya. "Someone's trying to get to us." She looked down at Eli, now asleep against her shoulder. "I think I know who," Preston said. That afternoon, he called a meeting in his office. The room felt different now, not cold, not corporate, just focused. Maya sat across from him. His attorney, Sandra Griffin, joined by video. A man named Lionel Hatch, silver-haired, ex-FBI, sat at the corner of the desk, flipping open a laptop. "This wasn't random," Preston said. "We're about to acquire a key Lark Technologies division. There's been pushback, pressure. Now this," Sandra nodded. "You suspect internal sabotage." "I know it," Preston replied, "and it's personal." Lionel tapped his keyboard. "I ran a check on all outgoing digital access from the estate. There's one breach, a former assistant whose cloud access was never properly revoked." Preston's jaw tightened. "Sylvia Warner." Maya felt something sharp click into place. "She was here the day I arrived." Preston nodded grimly. "She now works for Lark Technologies. She's engaged to their COO." Maya sat back slowly, realization sinking in. "This isn't just business," she said. "It's retaliation." And they used Eli to do it. That night, Maya sat on the back porch alone. Eli was tucked in upstairs, the nightlight glowing soft beside his bed. But Maya couldn't sleep. Not after what happened. Not with the weight of it pressing on her chest. She was still there when Preston found her. "You okay?" he asked. "No." He didn't push. She looked at him. "They're not really after you. I know. They're after me. Because I'm the one they think doesn't belong." He said nothing. Then slowly, he knelt beside her and placed her hand over his chest. "I've built companies, lost sleep over board votes and stock prices, but none of that meant anything until I saw my son reach for your hand." Her throat tightened. "You don't have to protect me," she whispered. "I already am," he said, "because whether you realize it or not, you're part of this family now." Upstairs, Eli stirred in his sleep. Downstairs, Maya closed her eyes and let herself believe it, even if just for one night. Chapter 7. The test. 3 days later, Preston got an invitation he couldn't decline. A private gala, corporate, high stakes, the kind where board members shake hands over $1,000 wine and smiles hide knives. He didn't want to go, but he had to, and this time, he wasn't going alone. "I want you there," Preston said, standing in the doorway of the playroom, hands in his pockets. Maya looked up from where she knelt beside Eli, helping him piece together a tactile puzzle. "At the gala?" she asked. Blinking, he nodded. "It's not just for show," he said. "I want them to see who you are. I want you beside me." Maya hesitated. "You know how they'll look at me." "Yes," he said. "Let them." The night of the event, Maya stood in the full-length mirror, fingers trembling slightly. She wore a midnight blue dress Preston had sent to her room, elegant, soft, not too loud. Her hair was pulled back simply, her earrings small. She didn't recognize the woman in the glass, not because of the dress, because for the first time, she felt like she had a place. Preston met her at the bottom of the stairs, dressed in a sharp charcoal suit. No, tie, just an open collar. His breath caught the moment he saw her. You look, she laughed nervously, like a borrowed version of myself. No, he said, like the real one, finally being seen. The gala was held at a private estate, limestone pillars, valet lines, too many chandeliers. Inside, Maya clutched her small clutch tightly. Eyes scanned her, lips whispered. She felt them all. Who's she? Is that the maid? He brought her here. Preston kept his hand on the small of her back, steadying. At one point, an older woman in diamonds approached. Preston, she said, all elegance and steel. And this must be Maya William, he said clearly, my son's caregiver, and the reason he's smiling again. The woman blinked. How sweet. Maya smiled polite, measured. Preston squeezed her hand. You okay? He asked. Once the woman had drifted away. I've handled worse, she replied. But the real test came halfway through the evening. A man in a navy tux approached the mic. Well, he said. I think we all know who really turned this year's projections around. Mr. Vale and his team. Subtle laugh, sharp enough to cut. Preston's jaw clenched. The man continued. And I hear there's a new strategy behind his success, a quieter one. He gestured toward Maya. Every head turned. Maya froze. Would you care to say a few words, Miss William? The man asked, tone lined with poison. The room waited, watching, ready to consume her. Preston stood to protest, but Maya rose. Her voice was calm, only one. She stepped toward the mic, heels clicking softly. She looked out at a sea of faces that saw her as nothing but a mistaken silk. Then she said, sometimes the most powerful people in a room aren't the loudest ones. They're the ones who listen, who stay, who love in silence and show up even when no one's looking. If that makes me unqualified in your world, that's fine. I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to change one boy's life, and that's enough for me. Silence. Then, applause. Real, not thunderous, but honest. And Preston? He couldn't take his eyes off her. Later that night, back at the estate, he stopped her just before she disappeared down the hall. You didn't have to do that, he said softly. I know, but you did. I wasn't going to let them decide who I am. He stepped closer. No one ever will again, he whispered. Not while I'm here. And for the first time, he touched her cheek. Not possessive, not hesitant, just reverent. Chapter 8. The Breakdown. The week after, the gala felt like sunlight after rain. Eli laughed more, reached more, let Preston braid his hair with crooked little fingers. The house felt warmer. Even the staff smiled more often. But healing is never linear. And silence, it always returns before it storms. It began with a call. Preston stood in the study, phone pressed tight against his ear, his jaw clenched. No, I didn't authorize any media statement about my son. He listened. Then, a feature. Where did they get that photo? Maya, walking past the open doorway, froze. Preston's voice rose. She's not your angle. She's a person. Don't ever call this number again. He slammed the phone down. Later that evening, Maya found the article, a glossy tabloid headline, From Maid to Millionaire's Muse, The Mysterious Woman, Changing Preston Vale's World. As they took photos from the gala, zoomed in shots of her hand in his, one of her picking up Eli's dropped toy. The article speculated wildly, called her a former waitress, suggested an unethical caregiver arrangement, hinted at exploitation and manipulation. She read it twice, then closed the browser with shaking hands. When Preston entered the nursery later, Maya was folding toys into bins methodically, too methodically. He sensed it instantly. "You saw it," he said. She didn't look at him. "They think I'm using you. I don't care what they think." "I do," she whispered. He stepped closer. "Maya, do you know what this means for people like me?" Her voice was sharp now, frayed at the edges. Preston tried to reach for her, but she stepped back. "I finally have something good," she said, eyes wet, "and the world wants to tear it down. No one's tearing it down. They already are." Her voice cracked. "Tomorrow, someone's going to tell Eli, when he's older, that I was the maid who got lucky." Preston looked wounded. "You think that's what I believe?" "I don't know what to believe," she said, "because I don't belong in your world." Preston, and tonight proved it. He looked stunned. "Maya, please, I can't be a scandal. Not for you, not for him." She turned, walked out of the nursery, and Preston let her go. That night, Maya packed her things quietly. Just 2 bags, a toothbrush, 3 dresses, Loretta's tea blend. She sat on the bed, staring at the photo of her brother. "Did I make it worse?" she whispered. "Did I love too much?" A tear slid down her cheek. Across the estate, Preston stood outside Eli's room, hands buried in his pockets. He could feel the absence, the way the house dimmed without her. He sat by Eli's bed, head in his hands. "I'm sorry, buddy," he whispered. "I always mess things up." Eli stirred, opened his eyes, reached for the small red emotion card Maya had left behind. He placed it on Preston's lap. It read, sad. At midnight, Maya stood at the edge of the garden, luggage beside her. "Mrs. Green approached quietly. "You sure this is the right time to run?" she asked gently. Maya smiled sadly. I'm not running. I'm surviving. Looks a lot like heartbreak to me." Maya looked down. "It is." Chapter 9. The offer. The house felt hollow without her. Preston noticed it in the smallest ways. No soft humming in the hall. No cups of tea left forgotten on windowsills. No Maya sitting cross-legged in the sunroom, coaxing a smile out of Eli with quiet, invisible magic. Eli withdrew again, not loudly, just slowly. He stopped reaching for his toys, stopped looking out the window, stopped eating more than a few bites. Preston brought in a behaviorist, then another. They left. Eli stayed silent. 3 days after Maya left, Preston stood in the garden, staring at the empty bench under the magnolia tree, the one where she always sat. Mrs. Green approached. "Won't find her out here." "Sir, I know, but she left something." He turned. Mrs. Green handed him an envelope. Inside, a page torn from a journal. Maya's handwriting, small but steady. "Sometimes, love means walking away before the storm hurts the people you are trying to protect. But if anyone ever asks, no, I didn't run. I love that boy. I just couldn't let him grow up thinking I was a scandal he had to defend." Preston folded the note with shaking hands, then made a call. The next morning, Maya stepped off a city bus, backpack slung over her shoulder. She looked tired, but solid, determined. She crossed the street toward the small school building where she'd applied for a temp aide job. Just as she reached the door, a car pulled up. Black, sleek, a driver stepped out and held the door. Maya froze, and then Preston emerged, not in a suit, not in armor, just jeans, a flannel, and heartbreak in his eyes. "Maya," she shook her head. "Don't. I read your letter. It wasn't for—" "I know, but I needed to hear it." He stepped closer. "I let fear speak louder than love. I let them shape the narrative instead of defending what was real." Maya folded her arms. "I can't go back to being a whisper in someone else's house." "You won't," he said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a contract. She blinked. "Preston, what is that?" "A job offer with my foundation, starting a sensory therapy program for children like Eli. Her heart skipped. You want me to run it? I want you to build it. She stared at the page. Generous salary, creative control, benefits, and at the bottom, scrawled in his own handwriting, because I believe in how you love, and I want the world to feel it too. Her voice cracked. This doesn't fix everything. It's not meant to. Then what is it? He stepped even closer. It's a beginning. That evening, Maya returned to the estate. Eli stood by the window, small hand pressed to the glass. When he saw her, he didn't smile. He didn't cry. He simply turned and opened the door himself. She knelt, and he walked straight into her arms. Later, in the firelit garden, Maya sat beside Preston once again, but this time no silence, just the softest words. I didn't come back for the job. He looked at her. I know. She placed her hand over his. I came back because someone needed to stay, and I finally believe I'm worthy of staying. Chapter 10. The answer. 6 weeks later, laughter echoed through the Vale estate. Real laughter. Eli ran barefoot through the garden, his soft blue hoodie flapping behind him like a cape. In one hand, he held a paintbrush dripping with color. In the other, a red emotion card. He stopped in front of Maya, breathless, and pressed it into her palm. The word on the card, joy. She looked up at him, eyes stinging, and whispered, Me too. The house had changed. Walls were no longer silent. Rooms were no longer pristine and untouched. The fire pit was used nightly. Eli's drawings were framed in the hallway, and every morning, Maya and Preston sat in the kitchen drinking tea, side by side, not as employer and employee, but as something unnamed and undeniable. One quiet Sunday, they took Eli to the Railroad Museum. It was Eli who led them, tugging at Maya's sleeve as they approached the main exhibit, a vintage red engine, humming gently. He climbed the steps, sat on the edge, and stared ahead, wide-eyed. Preston sat beside him, Maya behind them. No one spoke, but everything was said. That evening, Preston stood at the edge of the garden, hands in his pockets. Maya approached, barefoot on the grass. He turned to her. I don't have the right words, he said. You don't need to. I hurt you. You healed me, too. I made you feel like a secret. And now, I'm not. He stepped forward, holding a small velvet box. She stilled. It's not what you think, he said, smiling gently. Not yet. He opened it. Inside, a gold bracelet, engraved with 2 words, You stay. Her breath caught. I want to build this slowly. Truthfully, I don't need promises. I just need you. She took the bracelet with trembling fingers. You already have me. He exhaled, like someone finally landing after a long fall. Later that night, after Eli had fallen asleep, with paint under his nails and a book on his chest, Maya stood in the doorway watching Preston tuck him in. He kissed his son's forehead, then turned to her. I used to think grief was the end of the story, he said. And now, she asked. Now I know it was just the quiet before the real story began. The next morning, Maya stood in front of a small group of parents at the newly opened Eli Vale Sensory Foundation. She spoke about patience, about silence, about finding language in the spaces between words. And when she was done, a woman in the back asked gently, Why did you stay? Maya smiled softly, hand brushing the bracelet on her wrist. Because love didn't ask me to earn it this time. It just asked me to answer. And her answer was yes. The fire pit crackled softly in the quiet. Preston reached for Maya's hand, not out of possession, but presence. They sat watching Eli chase the wind across the garden. No agenda, no therapy plan, just a boy being free. And for the first time in a long time, Preston let himself breathe. Not the breath of a CEO checking numbers, the breath of a father, a man, a heart, healing Maya tilted her face toward the light. She had once told herself she was just a maid, a caregiver, a fill-in for what the world had taken from this house. But now she saw it clearly. She hadn't filled a space. She'd become one. The space where a broken man could rest. The space where a quiet boy could speak without sound. The space where love wasn't owed, just offered. People used to say, a poor girl like her didn't belong in houses like this. But maybe love didn't care where she came from. It only cared that she stayed, not perfectly, but faithfully. And as the stars blinked awake above them, Preston whispered the words neither of them had ever rushed. I'm home, not to the estate, not to the success. To her, this was never just a love story. It was a story about seeing someone, about choosing someone even when the world says you shouldn't, and about healing what life tried to take together. Tell us, what are your thoughts on this story? Leave a comment and rate it from 0 to 10. And if this true love story touched something in your heart, be sure to subscribe for more life stories, romantic drama, and emotional bedtime stories like this one. Click here to watch our latest stories. And don't miss out. Tap the notification bell to follow all our CEO love stories, drama storytelling, and unforgettable endings. Because sometimes the richest love is found in the quietest rooms. And the most powerful women are the ones who simply refused to walk away.